So morning, everybody, and welcome to this session of Business Bite Sized. I'm really pleased to have two guests with me this morning, Jarrett from the Nelson Trust, which I'm sure you know, and Nick Gazzard from the Hollie Gazzard Trust. And today's session, we're just going to be thinking about the topic that's talked about a lot, even amongst COVID, which is violence against women. And the Nelson Trust have just finished a 16 days of action campaign, and we'll come to Andy in a moment and find out how that went. But this is a big subject now, and as business owners, we just need to understand perhaps a little bit more about some of the detail of the issues and what we can be doing to impact this. So we're going to be exploring that a little bit in the next few minutes. So we just want to come to Andy first. Andy, you just finished the 16 days of action campaign, but actually this is a big issue, right? Violence against women. How do you see it in terms of how big this issue is in reality?
In reality, in the last statistics that are available show that in the 12 months to March 2020, the crime survey for England and Wales estimated that 2.3 million adults experienced domestic abuse. That's 1.6 million men, and people may be surprised to hear that included 757,000 men. So a good proportion of people experiencing domestic abuse, surprisingly, are men rather than women. And during that period, the police recorded nearly 760,000 crimes.
So just an amazing stats, isn't it? Those. Nick, how do you see it from your side? What's your perception of the problem?
The problem is big. And Andy mentioned some stats there. I'll just do some ratios. 1 in 4 women, 1 in 4, and 1 in 6 men are affected by domestic abuse in their lifetime. And it's often not just the physical, it's often the hidden things like the emotional, the psychological, and the financial abuse that these individuals go through. And we consider these to be coercive controlling behaviours. And the additional issue here is that COVID-19 has blurred the boundaries between work and home, and a lot of people now carry out a lot of work meetings via video conferencing, and this can mask the physical symptoms of abuse that you can see, as well as reducing the potential for employers and their colleagues in particular to notice the changes in behavior of individuals. And that's what we normally use to try and pick these things up, the nervousness and the reticence to engage in conversations, that goes unnoticed now. So these indicators are now falling behind because we can't actually see them. Individuals normally go to work to escape abuse. And the work is their sanctuary. So not being able to go to work and having to stay at home is a real issue, and it affects both the quality of what they produce and the quantity. There's some more stats here which I would like to share with you, and this was from a survey undertaken by Vodafone, and they said that 37% of people surveyed had experienced domestic violence in some shape or form. Wow. And 67% of those that responded had experienced such abuse that it affected their career progression. So that's 67%. And the most astonishing stat for me is that 75% of those experiencing abuse are targeted at work. So, we can't ignore this in the workplace because it has a huge impact, a massive impact.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear, Nick. I think I'll come back to some of those points in a moment. But Andy, the 16 days of action that Nelson Trust just finished, I think, last week. What did you achieve with that campaign, do you think?
Well, getting those messages across to employers, not just those pure statistics, but the impacts actually for businesses themselves. Because as Nick alluded to, 33% of domestic violence homicides happened on workplace grounds. 56% of abused women arrive late for work at least 5 times. It's estimated that in England and Wales, domestic abuse costs £14 billion per annum to UK employers through decreased productivity, unplanned time off, lost wages, sick pay. So those are key, statistics that the impacts really on individuals and on businesses, let alone the challenge that many employers are facing. And, all three of us will regularly talk to employers, the key challenge about recruitment and retention of staff. So if companies can be seen to be good employers through things like being seen to be aware of the impacts of domestic abuse and have the systems and processes to be able to spot those warning signs that Nick rightly flagged up that are becoming increasingly masked, and know who to turn to be able to take action, is bound to help them to be able to be a good employer and help solve that challenge around recruitment and retention. So, and in speaking with employers during the campaign, and we were delighted to be working with partners such as the Hollie Gazzard Trust, Healthy Workplaces, Gloucestershire, to get those messages across. So the Nelson Trust were one partner in the campaign, but we were delighted to partner with others to get those key messages across through so many, different avenues to say, yes, this is good for individuals, this is good for society, and it's good for business to be aware and take positive steps around these things.
Yeah, I think the point you make there is an interesting one. We know from all the work I'm doing with businesses, actually finding people to do the work we've got is quite a challenge, and actually then retaining people. We know that it's a very competitive market at the moment, and employees are being approached by other firms all the time. So actually, if we can improve productivity and we can do things to help retain staff and actually attract people in the first place, and that those things are really important. But you scared me a bit with those numbers, because actually I suppose if I'm brutally honest about it, I sit here as a partner in a professional firm. I think we've got probably nearly 70 staff, and I think, yeah, okay, I understand that this stuff goes on, but it's not, it's probably somebody else's problem, because we like to think, we are a professional firm. I guess we have the staff within the building, but then you sit back and think about some of those percentages, and you think, well, if we've got 70 people, what's the likelihood of there being some issues within our client, within our team somewhere? And of course, I guess the other thing to think about on that is that we do have a range. So we have everybody from school leavers up to people that might be coming up to retirement. And I suppose if you pick up the papers, you perhaps get a perception that this is maybe a young person's problem. We hear about drinks being spiked and things like this, but actually, I guess it's not true. It's across the whole of the age spectrum, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right there, Will. Just to carry on from that point that you've talked about there, that Vodafone survey I mentioned, they said that 50% of respondents felt too ashamed to discuss their abuse at work. So businesses are not going to get people coming forward, because unless they create those environments and those cultures whereby they feel comfortable coming forward, that the business knows that they will support the individual if they do come forward. So we've got to create those cultures and environments so those people do come forward. You can band around stats all day, because there are huge amounts of stats which actually says that this is a huge impact. But it affects females more than males. And when we talk about diversity and inclusion, trying to get the female workforce up the ladder with their career progression, this has a huge impact on their career progression. So it's a double whammy for those individuals as well.
Yeah, so I think perhaps the key message from that is actually it's not somebody else's problem. It's likely if we've got any number of staff within the team, it's likely to be potentially problems there that we need to be thinking about. So I suppose that comes into two questions really, in terms of, well, what do we have any legal responsibilities as employers? And actually, perhaps Nick, you can touch on that one, and Andy, what are the practical things that we could be doing to show that we're supporting staff? So yeah, over to you two.
Yeah, every business has that legal responsibility for their to look after their staff, and the main statutory responsibilities relate to the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, and also the management of health and safety work regs, and that gives the legal responsibility should an employer be targeted at work to protect both the victim and co-workers. They have that duty of care. And bear in mind, 76% of individuals are targeted at work. There's huge responsibilities there for businesses. You've also got the Employment Rights Act, and this is one that a lot of businesses don't realise. Because a company can be held liable if someone uses workplace collateral. Let's say, for example, phones, email systems, computers, cars, to commit a crime. Then the business is responsible. So there's huge impacts there. And of course, we have the new regulations coming in this year around the Domestic Abuse Act, 2021. And I just want to just quote something here from Paul Scully, who was is the small business minister as a result of that act. He said that businesses have a duty of care to spot the early signs of domestic abuse. He also called on employers across the country to take some simple steps to ensure their organisations is spotting signs of domestic abuse and helping their staff find the right support. The government realised that businesses don't have to be specialists, and we realise that as well, but actually bring in the right individuals to have helped train the business to be able to do this. And I think that's what I would ask businesses to do, is to bring people like ourselves in, and we will train and we will help those businesses fulfil their legal and their moral duties to their staff.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I know you came in and did a bit of training with us back in the day. And I think, again, that the point now, I suppose, is when we talk about domestic violence, perhaps there's a tendency to think about, well, it's domestic, that's something that goes on at home. If it's not in the workplace, it doesn't, that's none of my business. But actually, you're touching on another point, which is actually abuse that's taking place in the workplace or using business equipment, which is an interesting one. So Andy, in terms of practical things, then just 2 or 3 practical things that employers should be thinking about doing.
And we tried to actually encapsulate those during as part of a pledge or a policy that businesses could sign up to during the 16 days to actually implement on an ongoing basis. And that said, we will treat people within our organisation with respect and dignity. We will do everything we can to prevent stalking, violence or abuse, either in the workplace or that which has an effect on people in the workplace, whether from a colleague, family member, or anyone else. This will include, and this to answer your question, this will include having guidance in place which is suitable to the size of our organisation. The guidance will ensure that an appropriate, safe, and sensitive response can be implemented and our employees supported when they raise such an issue. So what we're asking employers to do is not perhaps unreasonable. It's to have that be aware of the warning signs through the training that Hollie Gazzard Trust and others actually offer. Then to have some guidance in place as to what to do in those situations, and have that open door policy, those conversations, to be able to support and signpost to organisations and help. And if appropriate, to the police and other statutory agencies.
Yeah, and that doesn't sound like a pledge that would be difficult to give, does it, Andy? It doesn't sound, it's not massively onerous. It's just understanding and having a bit of a perception of what the problem is, and then being open to helping people if they raise issues. So, I mean, this is a yeah. Go, Andy.
No.
So this is a tricky subject, I guess, in a lot of ways, but again, the realization is that we can, if we can all make a small contribution, right? If we can all just do a few things to try and surface the problem, perhaps as much as anything, and then be available and open to trying to help, then that all those little things add up to a massive impact, don't they?
Yeah.
So
just winding up, back to that key point, good for business as well. And that's the point that we're trying to make. This is good for everybody. This is the proverbial win-win. And as Nick said, even the government have come on board and recognised that and have started to actually take actions in that respect and encourage agencies to come together. And this isn't a one-off. This is an ongoing thing that we want to come back to, not just during the 16 days of action, which is just finalised, but throughout the year. And also to come together as organisations and business leaders to actually get these messages across in a better and more effective way, and offer more support to individuals and companies that want to take the right actions.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Nick. I mean, just before we finish then, going into 2022, it's been an interesting couple of years for everybody. What's the plans, big plans for the charities going forward then, Nick? Do you want to go first?
Yeah, we've got a few things really. We'll continue to roll out Hollie Guard and Hollie Guard Extra, and in particular businesses. We're also talking to the government to try and get this, the government interested in get this across nationally. But this has massive impacts for businesses and helps them fulfil their duties, which we've already talked about. So again, it's a win-win situation for them. We're also working on a big project called Hollie's Hub, which hopefully will be in the centre of Gloucester, which pulls together our offices. We will have hairdressers, we'll train staff, we'll have apprentices in there to look out for domestic abuse and stalking. We'll make it something different. It'll be a social enterprise, so we'll involve the community. So that's a big one for us. We'll continue to work with the Nelson Trust in some of the projects that are ongoing to help vulnerable women across the whole of the Southwest.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Andy, what's Nelson Trust up to next year?
Oh, very much continuing to expand both the breadth and the depth of our operations, both geographically. This year we've expanded to do outreach actually into parts of South and West Wales to support women with complex needs, vulnerable and complex needs actually in the community. So I'm sure that will continue to actually meet that massive unmet need that there is out there for women. We changed this year in terms of slightly refining our approach to supporting the clients in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction that we support. So it will be consolidating that as well as making the most as we can. Fingers crossed, we'll find a way either to live with or to solve the challenge of COVID-19, to be able to offer better opportunities to get back into employment, to actually build relationships and things to our clients in recovery from addiction. We were very pleased in November to be able to reopen the Sober Parrot, our community cafe dry bar in Cheltenham. It's proven to be very popular. So we want to do even more to actually reach out to the recovery community to see that as a safe place to actually come to, as well as members of the public and businesses to actually hold meetings and use for, as a space that, for them along the way. And excitingly in Gloucester, we're taking on a community gardening conduit street called Common Ground that we hope again will provide a way to actually bring people in the community together in a different way. So delighted to be working in a myriad of partnerships as well as doing our own projects to be able to to make the better place for the clients that we serve and the wider community around us. Exciting times ahead.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, and thank you both for spending some time with me this morning. So we've talked about a tricky subject, violence against women, domestic violence. It's great to hear your thoughts, and hopefully business people tuned into this will pick up some of those things and potentially reach out to you. I guess on behalf of the community and all the business people, we should just thank you and your teams and for all the wonderful work that you do in the county and wider afield. Both charities, Hollie Gazzard and Nelson Trust, we know are involved locally doing some fantastic stuff, and as I said, nationally and even wider. So thanks both. Please pass our thanks back to the rest of the team, and have a good, successful 2022. Thanks for joining me this morning.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity into the community around us that make things happen for charities like the Hollie Gazzard Trust and the Nelson Trust.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, cheers, Will.